Testing YouTube 1, 2, 3.
All right, welcome everyone. I'm sorry we're getting started a couple minutes late today. Before we call to order our meeting, I will just I want to let everyone know that we do have an event coming up, Connect with Your City Open House, and this is on Wednesday, September 25th, and it's a drop-in at Echo Center between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. This is a great opportunity for people to come out and have engage with city staff, possibly some members of council, and just tell us what's working, what's not working with our city. And I think there'll be some tables to sit at and information booths. We want to hear from you in a variety of different ways. We're hearing an echo on our end here, so we're just going to take a moment and see if it's coming through okay on the stream. How's it working now? Still.
Didn't we have this issue before?
Testing again. We'll just pause for another minute or two while we try to work it out. Just testing again. Testing one more time. Okay, we're going to get started. We're going to deal with the echo, so if you hear us stopping, because it sounds very awkward, we will do our best. So we'll call to order our regular meeting of council, and before we start, I'd like to just recognize that we live, work, and play in the city of Port Alberni, which is situated on the unceded traditional territories of the Sishat and Hoopachasit First Nations. We do have an agenda in front of us. Councillors, are there any late items? Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, mine is not echoing.
Mine.
Love it. I'll share. Yes, I'm going to do that. I would like to add the Racket Club, an update on the Racket Club. And the other one is the Toy Run, Craft and the Farmer Market. Sorry, this is blowing me away. Anyways, the Farmer Market update. Oh, all right.
Testing this mic again. Oh, fixed. Amazing. Okay, thank you for that. So proposed new items, new business, item number 4 would be that was the Racquetball Club.
Yes.
Item number 5 is Toy Run. Item number 6 is a Farmers Market Craft Fair. Update or question? Any other items from councillors? Seeing none, any items from our corporate officer? Okay, would somebody like to move approval of our agenda with the additional items? Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Dame. Any comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And we have minutes from the special meeting held at 11 a.m. and the regular meeting held at 2 p.m. on August 12th, 2024 to be adopted.
So moved.
Moved to adopt by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Dame. Any comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, carried. We will move on to delegations, and we have just one delegation today, and this is the Alberni Valley Community Forest Corporation. We always love this presentation, and we welcome you to attend.
Thank you, Mayor Minion and council members. We're here today representing the board of the directors of the Alberni Valley Community Forest. With me is Chris Duncan, and of course, you know Ron Corbeil. We are here to present the city of Port Alberni with a dividend check representing the 2023 operating year. The community forest harvested about 10,000 cubic meters in 2023, and income from operations was $922,000. We were able to capture a good sales value in spite of the falling lumber prices. In 2024, we finished harvesting the volume started in 2023, early in the year. We do not anticipate any significant harvest volume for the remainder of 2024, amid weak log prices. We still maintain a healthy financial position, however, and we are focused on development and planning further ahead for 2025. We have completed our donations budget for 2024, and we were able to award 2 $5,000 donation checks to one to the Western Vancouver Island Industrial Heritage Society and one to the Navy League Cadet Corps 113. I can honestly say they were all very thankful, and I think that was a good PR for our community forest. At this time, I think we'd like to present the city with a check for $300,000 as our dividend.
Thank you. And before I come forward to accept the check, which we happily do, just want to thank certainly the board. And I know all three of you have been longtime board members, the manager as well, for all of the work that that is done to generate this revenue and dividend to the city. And I know that it is done, I think, in the way that we really appreciate as a city, which is with obviously a balance for wanting to just really, you know, create that long-term prosperity for the city through this, but also for the whole valley, building trails and recreation spaces, and really just done with a great mind for how the forest sector can contribute in a really positive way to our community. So we're really grateful for the work and how our community forest is being run and managed.
I should say, also say, are there any questions?
Does all of council want to come forward for a picture? We've got this nice space now, so I think we should. We'll have to just like crop this out or something.
Oh, yeah, let's all just be in between, it's fine.
Everybody in?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, at least,
Yeah.
no, we're good, gentlemen, we're the big guy in the back. That's right, tall guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll take the check.
Like,
Where's Andrew?
Andrew is.
Andrew.
Wonderful, and thank you again on behalf of council and the community to the work that the Community Forest Corporation does on our behalf. We have no unfinished business today, so we'll move on to staff reports. Oh, sorry, no staff reports either, so on to bylaws. And we have two items here. Item number 1 is a zoning bylaw amendment for 4691 Gertrude Street.
So thank you, Mayor and Council. So before you, we have a zoning bylaw amendment application for 4691 Gertrude Street. This request is to change a portion of the property to enable a bit more expansion to the Beaver Creek Home Center in the area. The expansion would accommodate a new storage building and some additional parking on site. The current zoning on the property is C5 office transitional, and the proposed zoning is C7 our core business district. An older single-family home was recently removed from the property. You can see here, this is just a photo, and the highlighted section is the portion of the property that is being applied to rezone. And you can see on this aerial, the house is still there at that time, but it is, like I said, it has subsequently been removed. This property is designated general commercial in our OCP, and the C7 zone aligns with that land use designation. The property also does meet the the regulations of the C7 zone and aligns with properties to the south. The C5 zone has traditionally been used as a transition between more intense commercial and residential on this, so there is a bit of a change here. The Beaver Creek Home Center has expanded a fair bit by acquiring adjacent properties and adding them to their business. You can see the kind of footprint of their current ownings on both sides of Gertrude Street, kind of in that like lighter highlighted color. Lumber, building and materials retailer and wholesaler, although a permitted use in the C7 zone, in staff's opinion, it really doesn't align well with the intent of a downtown core neighborhood. And so we will likely be examining whether that specific permitted use, and I'm not talking about Beaver Creek Home Center, but that use in general, whether that should continue in the C7 zone, because right now, someone could acquire other properties and establish this type of business in both our Uptown and in Northport area. So it's just staff letting you know that, yes, this is here. We're not sure that that use in the particular zone should continue, and we'll examine that after the OCP is done under the new zoning bylaw. We did send referrals out internally and externally. Our fire department did express some concerns about fire load and proximity to the residential properties to the east. We certainly believe that these can be addressed through appropriate setbacks, and when the detailed building design is to ensure that adequate fire separation or building construction can meet to resolve any concerns on this. Our community safety department did express concerns about traffic along Gertrude, and certainly that there is a bit of a current issue there, and this may add to that to a certain degree. It will also lessen the buffer a bit between the more intense commercial and the residential. That being said, Burke Road is a pretty wide right-of-way and has the advantage of, at least in this section, of a tree median. So certainly to the ones to the north, there shouldn't be a huge impact. The residential properties to the east might be somewhat impacted. They are zoned C5, so that office transition. So, and some have converted to offices over time. So again, not a huge impact being considered by this small addition to this business. Although on-site parking is not required in the C7 zone, the plans do propose to provide 6 additional on-site, so that will help to reduce some of the street parking issues. Again, though, it is increasing the footprint of the business, and so there still will be. It's a busy street in an active area. The Advisory Planning Commission did consider this application. It did support it coming forward to council. It will require MODI approval given its proximity to the highway, but MODI had no major concerns with it. Council may choose to waive a public hearing because it does align with the OCP. Staff are recommending that council consider having a public hearing, given that this location is in a commercial residential transition zone. But of course, that is council's discretion about whether they wish to waive or to hold a public hearing. Notice is given even when council chooses to waive, or if we have a public hearing, then full notice will be given. Council has the options to move forward for first, second reading, setting a public hearing, or waiving a public hearing, or to decline readings. And staff are recommending that council do give first and second reading, and in this instance are recommending it go to a public hearing. And I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for the report. Are there questions from council? Councillor Solda.
I don't know if it's really a question. I do like the 6 on-site parking because it's really busy in that area. And my concern is regarding when Johnson Road starts being configured with the ministry. A lot of people, and also when the roundabout goes on Beaver Creek Road, a lot of people come down Gertrude instead of going onto Beaver Creek or River Road. They'll come through Gertrude Street, and the lights and the traffic will be even busier. So I just wanted to put that out there if we have thought of that, and I do agree, a public hearing, we should go to a public hearing just because this is a big thing, and in that area, we've had issues in the past with when stock goes out and they want to display it outside and people are trying to get past with their scooters and stuff like that, and they've cleaned that up quite a bit, but that whole corner, that whole block is basically industry, and or with Beaver Creek Home Center, so I shouldn't say industry, it's not, it's a different type. So that's just my concerns, Madam Mayor. And if the Johnson Road, when that is reconfigured, how will that all work in the long run with parking and stuff?
Thank you. Other comments? Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very supportive of small business, and I'm very excited that they want to expand. But as you said, when they first started, it was probably very reasonable for them to be on that corner, but they have gone through several different expansions. So when I read through this additional expansion proposal, my first thought was this is probably not the best space for them to do that. But with that being said, they own all the property now. It's not going to be realistic for them to move somewhere else. But I think we have to be really cautious and think about the future for these types of expansion. So thank you.
Thank you, and appreciate you bringing forward that this is a permitted use in the C7 zone, as I think, you know, this is where it is. And as Councillor Haggard said, I certainly don't think we're going to change that now. But it's probably not a permitted use that we would like to see in this just general zone. So glad that will be looked at in the OCP. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, it is where it is. That's a fact. Should it be where it is? No, that may not be a fact, but just an opinion. But it is an opinion I hold. Certainly, businesses grow and change and prosper within a community, and I am very pleased that this business has done that in our community. Certainly, it has been not only central to the economy of our community, but it's been central to every project that has been approached by homeowners in our community, and certainly the city's a better place for it. But I have to say that this is now not the right place for such a business, particularly with regards to the comments that are in the report. The fire load that increases with the sale of wood products should be restricted to appropriate zoning areas such as the C1, C3, and M1. Now, I realize that there's a historical component to where this business is, but one must realize that as businesses grow, their needs change, and they should be finding ways to meet those needs in appropriate manners. Businesses move all the time. It may not be convenient, and it may not be the desire of that business, but it is the reality when their business exceeds the limitations of the area that they're in. And I would say that at this point, the great success of this business has exceeded the limitations of the area it's in. I do note very strongly the comments from the Community Safety and Social Development Department. Quote, "There have been reports of traffic safety concerns at this location on a busy street. Forklifts at the business cross Gertrude Street without traffic control. Customer vehicles cross the street to pick up materials. Pedestrian customers cross in the middle of the street to access the business. Large commercial vehicles block lanes of traffic to load and unload materials. The industrial nature of the business would be better suited to an M zone. The expansion of the property may impact traffic safety concerns as mentioned above." I think that is an understatement of extreme degree, that the expansion of the property may impact traffic safety. It definitely will. The expansion of the business over the years, as we see in the report from early 2000s to today's date, is a grand expansion, and it has affected traffic safety. And it's affected traffic safety in a way that I'm quite surprised at, that the owners of this business, being regarded as good citizens of the Alberni Valley, would presume to ignore the traffic laws, ignore the loading laws, park semis in the middle of the second busiest street in Port Alberni, directly in front of the busiest intersection in Port Alberni, and think that that's appropriate and that they are entitled to do so. It amazes me that the owners of this business would think it's appropriate to drive forklifts back and forth across the street, the second busiest street in Port Alberni, at the busiest intersection in Port Alberni, simply because it suits their purposes where they happen to have land. They do happen to have land there, and they have chosen to put their business there. In choosing to put their business there, the owners should have considered the impacts of abiding with the rules of that community, that neighborhood, and this city. And they simply have disregarded that. I don't think that it is appropriate to expand this site any further, and I do think it's appropriate that the city take a position to start enforcing proper traffic control and safety laws, especially in this area. So I will be voting against this motion.
Thank you. And before I go to Councillor Mealy, I did just want to state that appreciate some of what you have said here, and much of that is not necessarily to do with today's request for rezoning, but rather the current operations of the business. I think those are comments that are not to be disregarded. I think that the lands across the street have absolutely caused some issues in how the operation and functionality happens. And I think we should absolutely discuss that with the building or property and business owners. However, my personal opinion is that the expansion on the same side of the road of the main portion of the business is not going to impact that in any further way. I think if there's an issue in how some of the operations are happening, which I don't disagree with. I've seen forklifts going across the street, and that's certainly a concern. That's not necessarily to do with the rezoning of a property on the same side of the street. It's the main building, but I think it's to be noted and absolutely to be looked into further. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was going to make the motion to, I would concede to Councillor Solda first before I do that.
I think you could absolutely make the motion if you'd like to, because a comment can happen after the
Okay,
motion.
thank you. I just wasn't, I move that zoning amendment 4691 Gertrude Street, bylaw number 5112 be now introduced and read a first time.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Solda. And Councillor Solda, if you want to speak.
Yeah, I just want to address my colleague on my right here. First of all, I agree with Madam Mayor, the new space that their new expansion is actually going to be a benefit because they are adding 6 more parking, and it'll pull some people off the street. The semis and all the loading and stuff, because I travel that road daily, and I look at it, it's been there forever, and most people are aware. You see something happening there, you stop and you wait, you know. Who knows what the future holds? I mean, maybe that wasn't the right place at the time, but that's where it went, and I just like the idea. They've added more parking previously on their expansions on the same side of the street of the new expansion. So they've tried to pull people off the street. They've complied to when we have said something, Madam Mayor, but we've just always let them do what they're doing in the past.
Thank you. And again, I do think it's important to not disregard the issues that have been brought forward. I think absolutely there are some challenges with how the uses are happening right now. So I think we should not lose sight of that if this motion does pass. However, when we're speaking of rezoning, I think it's important that we focus on the land that is being rezoned. And the land that is being rezoned is on the same side of the street as their main property and business, the customer-focused business certainly. And as well, from a zoning perspective, to me, it looks like it is there's already a buffer in place of the C5 zone from the C7. So from a zoning perspective and land use, it appears to make sense to me. That said, how the business is currently operating and traffic impacts, while they may be somewhat of a separate discussion, I think it's a very important piece of this, or piece of the discussion to not let slip, regardless of whether it's, you know, a good, positive, contributing business in our community or not. It doesn't mean that it necessarily was the right location, and it doesn't mean that it is, that how it's operating is just to be left as is. So I think good conversation, and if this passes or if it doesn't, we certainly could refer those concerns to the Traffic Advisory Committee as a starting point, or staff could reach out and have a conversation with the building and business owners to see if there's some improvements that could be put in place. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? And opposed? Motion carried. And Councillor Mealy, if you want to continue.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that zoning amendment 4691 Gertrude Street, bylaw number 5112 be read a second time.
Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Solda. Any further comments? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? And opposed? Motion carried. And Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the amending bylaw number 5112 be advanced to a public hearing on Tuesday, October the 15th, 2024 at 6 p.m. right here at City Hall and Council Chambers.
Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Solda. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And Councillor Patola, would you like to make a motion to refer to the Traffic Advisory Committee? Or any other member of council?
Not at this time. It's certainly, I don't think the Traffic Advisory Committee is the place to start. I actually think bylaw enforcement is the place to start. So there are other processes that we'll follow up on. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And we will move on. Item number 2, housing agreement bylaw for 5130 Argyle Street.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So before you today is a housing agreement for below market units as part of a larger project. The owner of the property at 5130 Argyle Street, which is just down the street at 2nd and Argyle, has received a development permit for a mixed-use multifamily and commercial building with 68 apartment units above. At the same time, a development variance, a minor development variance permit was granted for a 2-meter height variance. As part of that variance permit, a condition for a housing agreement to provide affordable housing units was a condition prior to receiving building permit. So essentially, the summary bullet points of the housing agreement are 7 units, so 10% of the apartment units as part of the project. The affordable units are studio apartments. The units will be secured at an affordable rate for 10 years under this agreement, starting at the time of building occupancy. And the units will be rented for no more than 30% of the tenant's annual household gross income. Staff are requesting that you consider this housing agreement bylaw to secure the 7 affordable rental units at 5130 Argyle Street. The units are, again, as I indicated, are part of a larger 68-unit development. And staff are recommending this housing agreement be given first, second, and third reading. And again, I'd be pleased to answer any questions of council.
Thank you. Before we go to other questions, on page 30 of our agenda, could you just explain the layout of this drawing? Like, this is 2nd and Argyle.
Yeah.
Is the corner here supposed to be 2nd and Argyle? Because it's backwards, right? I've just,
So if you're looking at the graphic, the graphic going, I guess, to my left, that's 2nd Avenue, and going downhill is Argyle. So the picture below, or the building orientation is not the same orientation as the aerial photo above. So,
yes,
yeah.
correct, okay. Because it looks like this is in the place of the Port Pub building, and it is not. Like from the picture with how the road is sloping and the street there, that's the other corner which slopes uphill.
Yeah, this is uphill from the Port Pub building.
Okay, it just doesn't make sense, so.
It says Argyle.
Yeah, it's just it goes, it's angled the wrong way,
Yes.
so it's all conceptual except we're at building permit stage, right? So it's not that conceptual.
No, so I guess the graphic below isn't that there's kind of a blank building there. That isn't the Port Pub building. If
3062 2nd Avenue.
Yeah. No, it's wrong regardless. This picture's
The reason why is because it says Argyle. That's why.
Yeah.
oh
And it
well,
refers to
okay,
that being Argyle.
yeah, the sign on the building at the corner, that's the 2nd Avenue frontage, not the Argyle frontage. True.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Councillor Solda.
Yes, just refresh me. There is underground parking for this building, isn't there?
Both underground and level parking off of the laneway. All the parking is accessed from the laneway property, and they will be required to improve that laneway and also looking to underground the utilities that are within that laneway.
Thank you. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I applaud the planning department on having a housing agreement attached to this development. We need them on every development. And I know that a policy or a report on a similar type of creating a policy for housing agreements was requested. And I just wonder, Madam Mayor, if CAO could respond to where we're at on that, and then I'll have some subsequent questions.
Thank you for the question. Right now, that isn't something we're working on right now. It is in the next pile. So again, we'll get to it after we're done the workload of I'm not saying more pressing, but issues that are emerged and taking staff time at this time.
Scott?
I guess just one thing I would mention, the province just issued a recent guidance document on what they're calling inclusionary zoning. And part of that will allow local governments to require affordable housing as a component of any new residential development, even without the need for a rezoning. So the province is enabling local governments to look at that. I have to tell you, there is a whole lot that comes with that, including a requirement to do a financial feasibility analysis to ensure that local governments aren't requiring things that then would make a private development make it not a feasible, yes. So the province has provided some work. That is likely something that staff will bring forward again after the OCP when we look at our zoning bylaw, especially around the multifamily housing component of things.
Councillor Patola and then Councillor Solda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, I understand that although we would like people to be well-minded community partners, we don't want to kill that goose with the golden eggs. But I am interested in, so this is kind of a three-part question. The things that I noted here is that it's 10% of units, not 10% of the square footage of the development. It's only for 10 years, and it's only resulted in studios being affordable. Those are the three items that stood out to me. And if we were to have a policy, I would think that it would be more along the lines of the norm from CMHC, where it's a 30-year low rent policy that includes all units, so that all types of families are able to access it, and that it would be on the square footage and not just the number of units. So more or less comments. Mr. Smith, if you wish to respond to how we got to where we are, it would be great. I am impressed that we're doing it. I'm very impressed that we're doing it, and I'm just thinking that maybe that goose could lay a slightly larger egg. Thank you.
But without getting into too much detail, we thought this is something we really wanted to try and do. So we have been actually spending a fair bit of time working with the developer. And given that we don't have this inclusionary zoning or those kinds of backing, we worked with them to try and get something that they could then, and still make the project feasible. I mean, I think local government and the province in general should be looking at these kinds of things, and where we can, we should do them. That being said, true affordable housing is going to need to be provided by senior levels of government. We cannot expect that private development industry, so they can be a part of the puzzle and help where we can. And so we've worked with this developer to put something forward that provides some deduction for some units as part of this project without putting the project in jeopardy.
Thank you. Councillor Solda.
Yes. Scott, do you know if they're going to have wheelchair accessibility rooms in this particular build?
I would have to look at the detailed building plans. They will meet the BC Building Code. Accessibility is part of the code, but that comes into play next year, I believe. And please don't quote me on that. So it's currently meeting the BC Building Code. I don't think all the units are designed for full accessibility. Again, this is a private developer project.
Well, if the code's next year, it won't be built overnight, so it could happen next year. I'm just putting it out there.
They intend to try and take the building permit out towards the end of this month. It's at the time of when the building permit is issued, that's the code that applies.
Okay, I just think it's really important that there is 1 or 2 apartments there for wheelchair accessibility there, residents. The other thing too is I'm really happy, even with 30% of the household income for low-cost housing, but it's not, it's a Band-Aid, but it's good enough for now. And the 10-year term, I did look at that and I went, whoa, what happens after 10 year? Am I suddenly paying a lot more? What happens? You know, a lot of people like to live longer in their homes.
The housing agreement guarantees that amount. Then they'll be subject to the normal residential tenancy rules in the province. And I don't know what those will be in 10 years.
Thank you. Councillor Mealy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If you allow me, I'll move that Housing Agreement 5130 Argyle Street, bylaw number 5114, be now introduced and read a first time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. And I just want to say that I think this is a fantastic development, and I'm really happy to see the housing agreement in place. I think this is really a step in the right direction to be moving, albeit I think, yes, absolutely, it could be longer, could be more. However, this is a good step that we haven't had before. And I do just want to clarify, and I know this is just for the housing agreement, but so the sign that says Argyle is actually second. So does that mean that the bulk of the commercial space is on second and not fronting on Argyle?
There's both commercial space on Argyle and second. But the Argyle one, the entrance is kind of downhill, so you can't really see it from this
Okay.
graphic very well.
Yeah, just trying to, again, I really like this development. Just trying to really make sure that we're keeping with, trying to build as much vibrancy as possible along the Argyle corridor. And so when I first saw this and thought Argyle was where it says Argyle, I thought, wow, that's great commercial vibrancy. On the Argyle piece, it does look like mostly wall with some vibrancy and so, one commercial space. So obviously it depends what goes in there to see, what's going to happen and how much it will add to the area. And I know that's certainly outside of our control, but I do just want to say that I think it is absolutely critical that as we, move forward with developing this corridor, which we are seeing a lot more interest in it, as we do our combined sewer overflow and streetscape improvements, I think we will see some other key pieces. I think it's really important that we ensure as much commercial space, the right commercial space as possible along this corridor to ensure that we really do get that vibrancy back in the area.
Absolutely understood, and that's a strong goal of ours. Sometimes when you have these slope topography ones, you need to be a bit creative in order to maintain that and still have a functional building. So we did work, our staff worked really hard with this developer, but totally understand, and that is very important to the planning department as well.
Absolutely, and I love the look of the building. I think it's fantastic and will be a really great addition to the area. Councillor Mealy.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, just to point out, also, especially on that conceptual, is that the Argyle Street side, through council as a whole, although not unanimously, has decided to make it a parallel parking, not an angle parking on that block. So that's going to look different as well. Sorry, yes.
Well, and please understand that this is not part of the building permit. This is a graphic just to be somewhat demonstrated. So the streetscape work will be done by the city. They have to do the infrastructure work underground and the hydro, but the city has in its plan, in its engineering world, a project to do from first to third, and that will mitigate what the streetscape works. And we've been in discussions with this builder, so the builder is aware of what the city is proposing to do in this area.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no more comments on the motion, which is first reading, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move that Housing Agreement 5130 Argyle Street, bylaw number 5114, be read a second time.
Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Solda. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that Housing Agreement 5130 Argyle Street, bylaw number 5114, be read a third time.
Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you very much. And moving on to G, correspondence for action. We have first an email received August 8th, 2024 from M. McZulit requesting an extension of the noise bylaw from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. during special events held at the Italian Hall. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that council direct staff to prepare a report providing information as it relates to the request received to provide a permanent extension to the noise control bylaw from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. during special events held at the Italian Hall.
Thank you, sir. And seconded by Councillor Solda. Discussion? Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just that these are the new operators of the Italian Hall. And in talking to Mr. McZulit, it was just a formality. They just want to make sure that they have everything, all their T's crossed and I's dotted if they want to have special events past 1 a.m., which I'm sure all of us has gone to one of those at the Italian Hall over our years. So I just want to make sure they want to be good neighbors and ensure they're doing the right way.
Thank you. Can someone speak, before we get a staff report on this, can someone let me know what the process is right now if someone wants to have a special event and exceed the noise bylaw?
Sure, thanks for the question. So currently, the applicant, they would have to apply for an extension to the noise bylaw, and then city staff would review, and usually we do bring something to council to change the time at that for the event. So I know that there are a few applications that have came forward, I believe, in the past year. We don't get them often. And we take into consideration, the neighborhood and the noise, everything like that. I don't know how, if or it will be possible to grant a one-time request like this for ongoing. Currently, while staff investigated, they will be required to follow the process they currently do and apply on a one-off basis.
Yeah, and I'm personally not sure I would want to give a blanket exemption. I mean, this is a pretty residential neighborhood. There's two apartment buildings right behind. There's houses right across the street. Recognizing that it is where it is, which we've already recognized, kind of, is just the challenges we deal with on one of the last applications. But the noise bylaw is, I think, in place for a reason. And while we absolutely may want to give exemptions to that or extensions to it, I'm not sure we necessarily, if it's going to be for weddings, want every single weekend in the summer for the applicant to just have the ability to have noise bylaw until 1 a.m. I'm not sure we want to give that away. I know there's other wedding venues in the city of Port Alberni who just tell their guests that it ends at 11 as a result of the noise bylaw. So I don't personally think that I would support this request, and as a result, I'm not sure that it's worth having staff write a report. I think we should be cautious of the amount of staff reports we're asking for, unless it is something that we strongly want to find a way to enable. But from my perspective, I'm not sure I want to enable a blanket extension of the noise bylaw in what is a very residential area. Councillor Patola and then Councillor Solda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I applaud the individuals for trying to have forethought and not offend any of rules. Although I don't see any reason why the current rules aren't working, and I wouldn't want to provide a blanket exception. I also wouldn't want to have to get into an argument about whether an event is special or not. I'm sure every wedding is special to some people, but not necessarily special to the neighbors that have to listen to noise beyond 11 p.m. So I would suggest that we don't need staff to write a report on this while they're doing the workload they're already under, and I simply wouldn't support the motion.
Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, question is, how many requests have come in from the Italian Hall since they took it over for an extension?
3, Madam Mayor. I think this is kind of the first one, just because they decided to be kind of upfront and kind of get ahead of it, that they wrote this letter to try to cover all their bases.
Thank you. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Staff probably won't know, but maybe Councillor Solar or Councillor Mealy might know. Historically, like pre-COVID, I know we've all been to many special events there and many weddings there past 11 p.m. So historically, what was the noise bylaw pre-COVID? Do you know at all? Or what was the rule or noise bylaw? I'm not sure. I don't know. Nobody knows?
Sorry, if I may, Madam Mayor, I'll take a run at that. I think it was based on its own individual events, I believe, but I've never been at the Italian Hall late and someone had a question about, is this the noise bylaw issue? We go back to the old handshake and a wink kind of process here in the community for years and years. So I want to say it was per event basis, but I'm not entirely too sure.
Madam Mayor, I don't remember ever coming to the Italian Hall, coming to council, but it was always, when you're at an event there, it's always on last call. So you got, if your liquor license goes to a certain time, then you got another hour. Everybody leaves as soon as that last call happens anyways, or they fill up and they go from there.
Danielle.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I can't speak to what our bylaw was previously, but I know 11 o'clock is generally fairly standard. And then, like you said, with our bylaws and how our department is, it's complaint based anyway. So, those events that do end up spilling over, obviously there are some issues being with it in a residential area that is likely that complaints will come faster than other events in other areas.
And just lastly, could you tell me what the process is if someone wants to apply for an extension to it for an event? Like, is there public notice required, or is it just write a, request to council and it comes before us?
That's correct. Yeah, it's just generally like most of our other special events, it comes to council in generally like a letter like this one. It's just, event specific with attached dates and times.
Thank you. Then, council, my perspective, and I'll just not support this motion. My perspective is, one, we shouldn't ask staff to write a report on something that we generally are not overly intending to support, and that would be mine. And two, I think to give blanket approval to someone in a very residential, highly residential area, to have a band till 1 a.m., for instance, is just not right. So, if there's a couple events over the course of the summer that need to be that late and they want to write us a letter and ask us to permit that, then I'm sure on a one-off kind of basis, council will be likely to support that. But I think we could potentially open up, some pretty significant problems if we just lose sight of managing, and we have given somehow a workaround 1 a.m. Noise bylaw to a specific group. Councillor Dame.
Thank you. I was just feeling a little left out. I hadn't chimed in. So I fully agree. I think it's important to make it very clear, and I think we have that our hesitance to make this motion is just based on the fact that a person can already get that permission for an event on an event-to-event basis, and that it is complaint-based. And if you properly manage your events, there shouldn't be a problem. So, I agree.
Thanks. And lastly, I think this is a great group. I'm glad they're managing the Italian Hall now, but again, I think it would take away quite a bit of our ability to manage the community in that sense if we were to give a blanket 1 a.m. extension. Councillor Solden, then Councillor Mealy.
Just to say thank you to the operators, to think of coming ahead of the process and trying to get the noise bylaw changed, and where others wait right to the last minute. So I just want to say thank you to them.
Absolutely. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I just want to echo that as well. Just thank you to the McZulits for coming forward and doing the right thing. I just want to mention too, it is a residential area, but it's not as residential. I mean, you have a funeral home on one south, you have an old BC Tel building that's not being utilized to the west, you have a hydro right away and the dentist's office to the east. You do have the apartment complex behind, and I totally understand that, but that is pretty much the extent of the residential in the area. And I did hesitate to say that I don't believe the city's had a ton of complaints from that area over the years, but I'd love to ensure that they can have their doors open at the Italian Hall. That's it. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Absolutely. And my comment about it being highly residential is as a result of the high concentration of units behind it, because I think there's 2 apartment buildings and then there's duplexes across the street. But the one apartment building is directly behind it. It's very close. And so I think we do need to be cognizant of that. This will, if we don't proceed with this and it does come forward on a one-off basis, we will also at least have a sense of how many extensions are they actually looking for? If it's, going to be 3 or 4 throughout the year, then maybe there's another mechanism that we can work with. But if it's going to be every weekend or on weeknights or a variety of things, I think that's too little control for us to have. Councillor Mealy.
Sorry, just one more, Madam Mayor, then if we're going to move on from this subject, just as long as staff can talk with the McZulits and just see if there's anything in the letter that it wasn't mentioned, just to ensure that we have the right thought process, or if we've missed something on their end, that there's another reason why they've come to council ahead of time. So just want to make sure that we cover all those bases.
Absolutely. Okay, on the motion then, all in favor? And opposed? Motion defeated. And item number 2, we have an email dated September 4th, 2024 from Synergy Foundation requesting council support for application to the province for a circular economy ecosystem project. Questions or comments from council? Would anyone like to read the motion? Councillor Mealy.
Sure, Madam Mayor, it's hockey season. I got to get back into it anyways. I move that council direct staff to prepare a letter to the province on behalf of Synergy Foundation in support of their application for a Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program, REDA, grant to establish a circular hub strategy for construction and demolition waste diversion in the Alberni Valley.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Solda. Comments? Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just was wondering if someone from the administration could refresh my failing memory as to, do we do this? Don't we do this? Do we do this automatically now? I'm not really sure where we're at anymore with supporting businesses. Not to say that I wouldn't in this case, but just I'm not really sure what our policy
We
is.
don't do it automatically. We did implement our letter of support process, but only for if a letter does not meet the timeline and needs to be looked at urgently, certainly not in a way that intends to roundabout council having the opportunity. If there's anything else to add. Did that answer all of your questions? Thank you. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, and I just wanted to say, I did note that they said in here, I think that they've presented to or spoken to council in the past, and I presented to council in the past, and I don't specifically remember this group presenting. However, I know that we have had, we've been engaged in some of their work with the North Island College Deconstruction and Salvage Training Program, so I know we've had updates about their projects in the past, but it would actually be great, I think, to have a presentation at some point from them. They're doing some really interesting work around circular economy in the community. Councillor Mealy, I think you read that motion. Thank you. Moved and seconded by Councillor Solda. Any further comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And item number 3, we have an email dated September 3rd, 2024 from Wesco Food Society requesting council support towards a grant for a community food kitchen. Would anyone like to read this motion? Councillor Dame.
Sure, yeah. I was actually going to make a comment. I can read the motion for discussion. That council directs staff to prepare a letter to Wesco Food Society in support of their grant applications for a community food kitchen.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Mealy, and Councillor Dame, go ahead.
Sure, thanks. No, I think that there's a lot of great things in what Wesco is doing, and very supportive of in general and principle of it all. I was a little bit, I guess, confused. It says just towards grants in general, and I feel a lot more confident in sending a letter of support if I know exactly what I am supporting. So it's not that I wouldn't support Wesco. It's just it seems that this would just be an ongoing letter of support that could be put towards any grant in general that he might apply for. Is that?
Sarah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So yes, that's correct. I did ask for any specifics related to the grant applications, but it was just a general letter of support for future grant applications.
Thank you. And I almost wonder if it would be best to take out the, for grants piece of it and just structure this letter of support as support in principle for the work that Wesco is doing, and they can utilize that general letter of support for grant applications without it being specific to grants if it suits them. But I agree, I had the same kind of thought. Typically a group will come to us and ask us for a letter of support for each application they're submitting, or for their project generally to show that they have community support for the project they're undertaking. I'm not opposed to either of those, but I think mixing the two and saying a general letter of support to use for any grant you want is not necessarily proper, just because we don't know if they're applying for a grant, if someone else we also want to support is applying for a grant, and we give a letter of support for the other group and we've already given a blanket one for this group, I think it's not necessarily the right process. So if council is supportive of even just making kind of a friendly amendment to this motion to have it state or take out the grant piece, yeah, in support of their community food kitchen. So I guess for clarity, that council directs staff to prepare a letter to Wesco Foods in support of their community food kitchen. Would that work for everyone? I think it's a bit cleaner. Comments? Councillor Patola.
Not on the amendment, because my comments are much more general and aren't affected by the amendment. But I agree, Madam Mayor, with your indication that generic support is probably not something that the city council should be involved in. Not speaking for the rest of council, maybe we all want to be involved in it. I don't. I don't think that generic letters are of any use, and they certainly can end up providing a indication that council supports something that they actually don't. I would rather be writing letters supporting specific grants or specific projects. This is generally a letter saying that we like a business. And although from what's reported, the owner represents the business in a very glowing light, but I really don't know anything about it and don't know whether I should or shouldn't support it being different than any other business. So I would be opposed to writing generic letters at all. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, I think from my perspective, I am in full support of their community food kitchen initiative that they're undertaking. I think they're doing a lot of good work in the community. However, I don't think that writing a generic letter of support makes sense. So with my friendly amendment, I will support it. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none on the motion, all in favor? And opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, and proclamations, item number 1, we have the toy run. Who'd like to read this one? Go ahead, Councillor Patola.
No, I'm going to recuse myself as a director of that society.
Thank you. I was just waiting for you to recuse yourself. Councillor Mealy.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I thought you were forcing him to say it, that's all. No, I understand, yes, no, I understand. All right, now that Councillor Patola has left, I move that council support the Port Alberni Toy Runs Association's activities taking place on September 14th and 15th, 2024, including staff working with event organizers to coordinate CIP funding for any required permits and or incidental subject to A, the notification of emergency services in BC Transit, B, implementation of a traffic safety plan to be approved by the City of Port Alberni, including qualified traffic control personnel as required, C, provision of standard liability insurance in the amount of $5 million, B and D, receipt of a special event permit from the LCRB, and further, that council on behalf of the Port Alberni Toy Run proclaim September the 9th to the 15th, 2024 as Port Alberni Toy Run Week in Port Alberni.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. We will gather Councillor Patola. And item number 2, we have that a letter dated August 13th, 2024, requesting that October 2024 be proclaimed as Community Inclusion Month, and this is from Port Alberni Association for Community Living. Councillor Dame, would you like to read this?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that council on behalf of Port Alberni Association for Community Living proclaim October 2024 as Community Inclusion Month in Port Alberni.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Dame, seconded by Councillor Solda. Any comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And item number 3, we have a letter dated August 12th, 2024, requesting that the week of October 6th to 12th, 2024 be proclaimed as Fire Prevention Week in Port Alberni. Councillor Haggard. Would you like to read this one?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move that council, on behalf of the Port Alberni Fire Department, proclaim October 6th to the 12th, 2024 as Fire Prevention Week in Port Alberni.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And we'll go to correspondence for information, and I will go to our corporate officer to highlight the list.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So for correspondence, we've received from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs condolences for the passing of Councillor John Douglas. From UBCM, provincial response to the 2023 resolutions, one being endorsed, the other kind of being put forward to further government bodies for evaluation. We received correspondence from the BC Games Society, just as summarizing the 2024 BC Summer Games participant and medal count by city and region. From the Kidney Foundation, supporting living organ donation by municipal employees. From the Village of Lumbee, UBC elections correspondence. From UBCM, Canada Community Building Fund, First Community Works Fund payment to the city for 2024-2025. From the City of Campbell River, a copy of a letter addressed to Premier for urgent request for provincial support in addressing homelessness in Campbell River. From the ACRD, the submarine water main to West Bamfield replacement notification in 2025. And then various resolution submissions from local governments for the 2024 UBCM convention.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Seeing none. Councillor Solda, would you like to move receipt?
Receipt of the correspondence.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Dame. Seeing no comments on any of the correspondence. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And on to reports from in-camera. We have one report from in-camera today, and that is regarding audit services and council releases for public consumption, acceptance of the quotation to extend the external audit services of MNP for the years of 2024, 2025, and 2026, and appointment of MNP as external auditors for this period. On to council reports. Are there any items councillors would like to speak to? Reports for the last period of time. Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, I just want to congratulate the Salmon Festival Committee for a fine salmon festival and concerts that they had, and also to the Fall Fair. There was a lot of work and organization, and everybody enjoyed themselves immensely, so congratulations to all.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. It is so nice after these years to have what felt like just a normal salmon festival back in our community. And I know it was enjoyed by many people, and definitely appreciate all the work of the volunteers for that, as well as the Fall Fair this year. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On behalf of Councillor Dame and his beautiful helper and myself, I'd like to thank the Industrial Heritage Society for allowing us to ride with them in the Fall Fair Parade. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to new business. Item number 1, Public Works Yard roof replacement.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the roof on the city-owned Public Works Yard building has reached the end of its useful life and requires replacement. So the need for replacing this roof was first identified in 2021 and was added to the capital plan in 2023 for completion in 2027. And staff have found that in the interim, the roof is leaking and patches no longer suffice. So the roof includes 3 sections, and the estimated cost for each of those sections are on page 103 of your agenda package. So the projected cost for replacing the entire roof is $350,000. And staff recommend that council direct staff to replace the entire roof, so all 3 sections at this time.
Thank you very much for the report. Are there questions from council? Start with Councillor Haggard.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Mayor, but I believe we talked about a new roof during the last term, and we kind of held off because at that time we were looking at possibly moving and building a new public works yard. Is that still on our radar, or is that kind of fallen by the wayside? Can you respond to that, or do you know?
Thanks for the question. Currently, we do need a new public works yard and parks yard because we are in the tsunami zone. I know there was a few sites looked at years ago, but that has fallen off the radar as we do need to do geotechnical looks at the possible sites. And also just do just get a lot more information about the sites. So I'm guessing it will come up in future. The need for moving the sites. We are working towards how we can better plan and where our equipment is in case of a tsunami. But really, that is the major reason why we need to move our public works yard, but it does come at quite a cost. So again, we want to make sure we do our due diligence. And in the interim, we do have failing infrastructure, so we do need to replace it. And even if we move forward with moving the public works yard, it would take several years to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Solda, and then Councillor Patola.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councillor Haggard asked one of the questions, but the other one too is, are we looking at wood or a metal roof? I mean, would it be better to go metal? And also, when would it start and when would it finish? If it's next year, where are we going with this?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It would be 2-ply torch-on membrane. Metal has not been considered due to its cost. It would be significantly more expensive. We would be looking to put it out to public tender immediately to try to get it in place before the rain starts. We don't know what kind of interest we would get, but that would be the goal.
And Madam Mayor, just a follow-up, a life of a roof, especially for this, and I had concerns because there's been talk about moving the building too, moving the works yard. But I do agree that if you're going to do one, you may as well do all three. I mean, and the other thing too is money is coming from, I remember looking and going, okay, how do we replace the money back into these funds eventually? Like, how are we going to get that back? And I don't know if it's your question or to answer or.
Through the chair, thanks for the questions. I'll try, and our facilities manager can answer some of them if I'm off. But a roof, a torch-on roof should last around 25, 30 years on the facility if the base structure is good. I believe the base structure at this point, we can fix it adequate to hold the roof. And I believe there are leaks in all three portions of the roof. It's not, the roof was put on all at the same time previously. And there was another, I'm trying to remember the last one there.
Or the dollars.
Oh, the dollars, yes. So we do take it out of reserves and then we'll bring it forward at budget time and we'll have a conversation on where it comes from.
So, Madam Mayor, if I may. So if we're taking it out of reserves, how do we put back that money? That's that's the question. I just don't want to see our reserves keep going down and down. And so the leaks that we have, are they extensive leaks that we're not just going to patch it? That would be asked by the public, so I'm just curious.
So I can start on the first one, which is it could come out of taxation. It could come out of gas tax, I believe, or if we had other funding that came in, and we would provide all those options to council to make an informed decision at budget time. The roof is failed beyond a point of just patching at this point. The facilities manager has worked with contractors to patch it several times. They are no longer adequate, and we've actually are at the point now where it's actually disturbing the workflow down at Public Works, and there's parts of the building that are having to be remediated inside because of the leaking roof. So I don't know if there's more that the facilities manager would like to add on to that, but it is turning into a health and safety issue, and that's why it's here before you today.
Thank you. That's correct. What the CAO discussed, there is areas like over our SCADA system, we have sensitive equipment in the sign maker shop that have also experienced leaks, and we recently had to remediate some mold in one of the change rooms due to the leak.
Thank you. Sorry, I've got Councillor Patola and then Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have two questions. The first is the roof replacement has already been included in the financial plan, and we're just bringing it forward a few years. Is that correct?
That is correct. It was originally scheduled for 2027, and now we're proposing it be moved up.
Thank you. And I suppose, sorry, I said 2 questions. This is now 3. I suppose that it's only logical to assume that it's cheaper to do it now than it will be to do it in 2.5 years.
Correct. That seems to be the assumption for most construction.
And finally, I think Councillor Haggard was referring to a report that was done either in 2020 or 2021 with regards to the Public Works Yard. Has that been reviewed with respect to the recommendations therein? And I'm just wondering if perhaps that report could also be made available to council.
There was not a report done. There was a request for $50,000 to do a report to look at the option of moving the Public Works Yard, and that $50,000 was not funded. So a full report has not been undertaken. Council at the time asked for more information on why and what, and if there were actually real options. Council never ended up directing the report to be done. Thanks. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I do appreciate this. I'll be supporting this. I believe the roof has been an ongoing issue since my first time on council, and definitely if it's been identified in 2021, and I have spoken to a few people down at the works yard as well, it is becoming a health and safety issue. So just for that mere fact that we're not ready to move to another building, and our workers are working in there and having problems with mold and leaks and all that, and so I would totally support this. At this point, I'd also suggest that perhaps in infrastructure growing communities funds, if there's anything left in it, eventually that may be a way to get a little more money out of instead of going to taxation. So, but I will be supporting this when the time comes.
Thank you. And council will have the opportunity to direct where we replace those funds from at budget time. Yeah, Councillor Solda, I think you had one more question.
I do. Regarding dollars, I have no problem supporting, but I don't remember anything being said about mold or anything like that. Just leaks is what I'm hearing, and some equipment stuff. But anyways, gas tax, I prefer it to come out of the gas tax. I don't know how much is in there on the top of my head, and I'd rather see it come out of funds like that rather than borrowing it from the water fund. I think it was the water, et cetera, fund. But I would rather see it come out of those kind of funds.
All of the funds in the budget for this year are allocated, and there's nowhere else it can come from this year. So because this is a last minute request, it has to be borrowed internally. There's not other options. When it comes to next year, we could direct potentially for the funds to be replaced from gas tax rather than taxation or a variety of other ways as suggested by other councillors. But for this year, this is what staff has identified as the way to get it done now. And I'll just ask a final question. And I think we have just one company in town that does torch-on roofs. And I recently heard that somebody was in like an 8-month waiting kind of queue for that company. So, who knows if that's 100% correct or not, but that's what I recently heard. Are we going to be going out and really looking beyond the community? Obviously, we always like to have a local person do it if possible, but just recognizing the urgency of this. I know we typically go on BC bids or whatever the process is, but I'm hoping we can make sure we really try to entrust companies that, smaller companies that may not be on, looking regularly on BC bids. I think sometimes we miss contractors who don't use that system. So.
Yes, of course, we plan to go out to public tender, and sometimes we send out invites to bid for any companies we've worked with in the past or know of, so. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Mealy, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll make a motion that council amend the City of Port Alberni 2024-2028 Financial Plan Bylaw number 5097, 2024 as follows. 1, allocate $350,000 for the Public Works Yard building roof to 2024 capital plan. 2, allocate $350,000 from the Water Reserve Fund to be replenished with interest in 2025 with surplus followed by taxation as required. And B, that council direct staff to proceed with the replacing of the entire roof, 3 sections of the Public Works Yard building.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Patola. Any further comments? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you, and thanks for the information. And item number 2, Bird Street reconstruction project.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I'm here today to speak to you regarding, the Bird Street reconstruction project and seeking a recommendation for funding for the second portion of scope. So as a quick background, we've broken this project down into two components, one being the underground utility replacement and the second being the surface works restoration. Here today seeking funding for the second portion. There are three options in front of council, the first being a three-way even split between the water reserve, sewer reserve, and the Canada Community Building Reserve Fund. If you look to page 2 of my report, you'll see a nice little table after the financial implications summarizing each one. This option would also return $342,000 of the previously allotted $1.17 million back into the Canada Community Reserve Fund. The second option would be an even split between the water and sewer reserve for this work. And keeping the original allotment from the Canada Community Building Reserve. And then the third option being to actually take it from the Growing Communities Fund and not from the Water or Sewer Reserve in any way. Administration is recommending option 1 for the funding allotment, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the report, sir. Really appreciate that. If council goes with option number 1 and we are able to return $342,000 to the Canada Community Building Reserve Fund, would that be something we can use for the roof to the public works yard?
We can determine how to fund the roof from the Public Works Yard at budget next year, but generally, probably. I think, we would want a full understanding from our Director of Finance on if that project is eligible. However, I would think based on what we know already, it might be, and if not, we might be able to shuffle things around. But I really think we should wait until we get a full report on that at budget time next year. However, it is $350,000 approximately being opened up, wherever that comes from. Other comments? Councillor Patola.
Yeah, definitely, maybe I might want to kind of talk about how much this project has cost so far, and how this extra money is come to be required. Was it simply not included in the past? Is it cost overrun? Is it miscommunication with the amount that the contractor or developer of the area was supposed to provide? Some background on how we get there, maybe sort of, kind of.
Through the chair, thank you for the question, Councillor Patola. The original budget line item that was put in the financial plan for this project quite some time ago was placed without detailed design being completed, as well as the scope not being as inclusive as it is today. The original project, I believe, only ran from 10th to Anderson, whereas today it goes all the way to 16th. And in addition, we now have firm contractor tender pricing, so we're 99% confident in the pricing that's been submitted today.
Thank you. And I think that the distance piece is critically important to this. And I think anyone who drives that road on a regular basis recognizes that the original scope was not enough, given now all of the work that's happened in that area. Councillor Solta.
Yeah. Madam Mayor, I support the project and I'd rather get it done now than wait a couple of years and then it might not get done and everything's left and then it's a lot more money. But I have concerns about all these projects coming in and for money, and I hope there's not a lot more and coming out of different reserves and stuff like that till budget time. That's my biggest concern. Is that part of it. And also staff capacity. I mean, is this contracted out or can staff get her done type of thing, because there's a lot of projects on the books and I would like to see it be done.
Thanks for the question. Through the chair, this funding here, the project actually won't start until next year. We're finishing the design. We need the money to tender and award it, so the work can happen next year. A lot of times what happens if we don't allocate the finances in this year, we can't award a contract for the following year for the work to be done, because we have to have the finance to pay the bills on the award. And if we put out the contract after budget is approved next year, it's usually we don't get a contract or we can't finish it in that timeline. So with this streetscape adjustment and everything, the work probably will start in soon as the weather is able to, because we will be tendering hopefully in the fall. For moving forward. Okay, well, Jim might have a actual better timeline than I do on that. But the reason why these are coming forward now is because we want to get the projects done within the year that we said we would. And I know that administration had said that we were planning on finishing Bird in 2025. So we want to make sure that we follow through on that.
Just to follow up, Madam Mayor. So if we're going to do it next year, I understand what you're saying there, and I totally get it. But I'm also concerned about cost overruns. So is it going to, because it's being done next year, costs go up? Or have we got a built-in little kitty going?
If I may answer that question, thank you, Councillor Solda. Specifically to this project, what CAO mentioned applies with every other project. However, the design has been complete. We are going out for construction on this. This is what this funding request is for. In terms of cost overruns, we have, as I mentioned, this is firm tender pricing that's gone out. This is the contractor will be starting work in early October as soon as they're done with the utility work. We've also built in a small contingency into this funding request as well for any overages or any change orders or that sort of stuff to the project. So we have very high confidence that there won't be any cost overruns with this project.
Super, and I'll be happy if you come under budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One just follow-up question is the recommendation is to fund this from existing funds we have in the reserves and the building fund. There's, if I've got that right, but then there's a line on the bottom of the last page below the second chart that says the taxation impact from 1.3 million would be 4.2%. Is that simply a number for reference sake, that if this was to come from taxation and not from the reserves, that would be the effect?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Just a note on this project before we move more forward, and I know that this is up to 16th only. I think this is going to be a great improvement, obviously a great improvement given the current state of the road with the ongoing work that has been happening. But there is one additional block between 17th and Estevan, and I believe it's the only block that has no safe pedestrian access. It is also, so there's no sidewalks on one side of the road. There is a quite sloped grassy area that is not really walkable, certainly not walkable for people with strollers or anything else. Or anyone with mobility challenges. And on the other side of the road, there's quite a bit of road space. However, there's no sidewalk. That's the only block to connect because the sidewalk does go to 17th. And I know from having previously lived in that area, it's also, approaching the top of the hill. There's really limited visibility and it is a highly walked pedestrian area. I've personally, several times felt like my kids were at risk walking there, and every day driving it, I come up the hill or down the hill and almost don't see people walking there. So while I recognize we can't take this full project 2 blocks higher, I think that while we're doing this, if we could consider even some kind of even just on the right side of the road going up Bird, some kind of barrier for pedestrians, I think it would be a big improvement, and it doesn't have to be a full sidewalk or something like that, but while we're doing this work, if we could consider some kind of pedestrian safety, I think it would be critical. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that's an excellent idea. I'm wondering if it would be more appropriate to refer that to the Traffic Advisory Committee and get their point of view so that we have something official for the staff to work from.
We could. I'm not sure it's necessarily necessary, but I think it's important for staff to look at. If the Traffic Advisory Committee wants to look at it as well, they absolutely can. But I don't think anyone is going to look at it and think there's not a need for some kind of pedestrian barrier. It's low visibility, highly trafficked. Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, I've heard about this, and other people have said something to me about that area, and I'm just kind of curious, instead of just a barrier, what is the cost to do something? I mean, like what would the cost be?
See you.
Through the chair, there's actually, I've looked at the area. I happen to walk by there quite often too. There is a drainage swale on the right-hand side, and that's where most people walk up. There are some interesting grade differentials there, and how we would capture and deal with the utilities in the area. So I think we'd have to do a little more investigation to do a permanent solution in that area on those blocks and see if we can deal with some of the grade differences. For accessibility. It does get quite steep there, but also have to look at the water and make sure that we aren't causing any unintended consequences from that. So where I don't have a cost estimate for you on the spot here, there are some interim solutions that we could do. And I'll talk with our engineering department, and Jim and me can take a look at that area and see if there is something we can do in term until we can come up with a better solution for that area.
Yeah, I mean, there is a safety risk there regardless. And so even if it was just some temporary like bollards or something that, didn't interfere with anything else, we probably need a real solution there eventually. But in the interim, if there's something easy that could be done to just improve the pedestrian safety, I think it would be worth looking at. Councillor Soldat.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Madam Mayor. I just look at that particular area wasn't as developed as it is now. So there's a lot more traffic, and what was good in the past is not necessarily great in the future here. So it's something to take a look at. And that area is fast developing, even more so as we speak.
Through the chair, as development continues up there, we have to look at the full transportation network up there and also the pedestrian access, bike access. Actually, part of the Bird Street, when Bird Street was first conceptualized, it didn't actually have bike lanes in it. So when the development happened at the old high school site, there at that time we weren't considering bike lanes in the area because of the development up there and the possible more development. That is why the design was changed to include multimodal transportation up Bird Street, connecting into that area. So as we move up the hill and with further development, we will definitely have to keep our eyes on that and make sure that there's safe access for everybody.
Thank you. And I don't remember attending ADSS and people brought their bikes to school. It just didn't happen.
Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have a comment, but I'll make the motion if that's possible at this point first. I move that council amend the City of Port Alberni 2024-2028 Financial Plan Bylaw number 5097-2024 by allocating $2,481,700 towards reconstruction of Bird Street between 10th and 16th Avenue with funding from the Water Fund and Sewer Fund capital reserves in the amount of $827,233.33 each, totaling a net increase of $1,311,700.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Dame. Further comments?
Just the one comment I would like to make, Madam Mayor, is just, first of all, thank you to staff for taking the time. I think there's a lot of people out there who have to be thanked for their patience. Obviously, with this project, it's been something where a lot of people have talked to me over, showing me graffiti on the road and such like that. But I just keep saying that we're doing it the right way. We're making sure that all the infrastructure can be done at once. We're not doing one project then another. So again, thank you very much to staff, and thank you for your patience out in the public, and it'll be done soon.
And a future thank you, because I'm sure it will be quite a future thank you for your patience to the public, because I think it's going to be quite a pain when this is actually being constructed. But it will be worth it for sure. So yeah, thanks for your comments. Any final comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And item number 3, we have provision for emergency health services. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Whereas the provision of emergency health services is a responsibility of the provincial government, and whereas the provincial government has failed to sufficiently fund the ambulance service in Port Alberni, and whereas the provincial government has instead utilized Port Alberni municipal tax funds to augment the inadequate level of ambulance service by downloading the provincial responsibility to a municipal service, and whereas the provincial government does not reimburse the City of Port Alberni for services it uses, and whereas this current model of service provision is not sustainable at the current level of taxation, and whereas continuance of this model will require tax increases to the citizens of Port Alberni of roughly 2% per annum and a further capital expenditure of unknown value in the tens to hundreds of millions of dollars. Therefore, be it resolved, I move that the City Council of Port Alberni hereby directs administration to, 1, create a fire department response policy and, where necessary, amendments to the fire control bylaw and its schedules to limit medical aid response to the category of purple. 2, create a timeline for implementation of this policy bylaw to take effect not later than June 30th, 2025. 3, notify the provincial ambulance service of this policy bylaw and the timeline for implementation. 4, notify the Ministry of Health of this policy bylaw and the timeline for implementation. And 5, include this policy bylaw as a central topic in meetings with relevant parties being held at UBCM 2024.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Mealy, and discussion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This motion came out of the COW meeting information that was presented by the fire chief last week, and the implication that if we continue in this current state of affairs, whereby the fire department responds with 1 million plus valued apparatus to medical calls that the ambulance should be responding to, we are going to A, exhaust our firefighters, and B, create a requirement for an expanded workforce in the fire department, being more firefighters and more equipment, that simply is not a fee that the taxation of the citizens of Port Alberni can support. This is a responsibility of the provincial government, and it is a responsibility that we have taken on voluntarily, but need to stop doing because of the impact on our ability to actually provide fire protection. This isn't a question of we just don't want to do it or we're pointing fingers at somebody else. The utilization of our service by other authorities has essentially put in jeopardy the ability of the Port Alberni Fire Department to provide proper fire protection services. What we need is to enter a better conversation with the provincial authorities and arrive at a better structure around the interaction between our fire department and the health resources of the province. This motion, by moving to a purple only response, will ensure that people that are in life-threatening situations still get the support from our fire department. But it will also force the provincial authorities into a discussion that they have avoided for many, many years now. And they have, I recall this coming up at our first UBCM, and I'm now going to my third UBCM, and nothing has been done yet. What has been done is the situation has gotten worse, and the fire department in Port Alberni has gotten further and further taxed. We've seen this coming, now it's here, and now requires some urgency in dealing with this. Thus, somewhat maybe draconian approach, but certainly doesn't necessarily have to be the final outcome. It can create that conversation where the services can be meshed, and the City of Port Alberni can be properly compensated with full cost recovery for whatever services the ambulance service wishes us to provide. It's an issue really of taking care of our firefighters and not just raising taxes and throwing money at them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patola. Councillor Dame.
Thank you. So first off, I would like to, through you, Madam Mayor, applaud Councillor Patola for taking a bold and direct action to address what is obviously a complex issue that will require probably more solutions and discussion. But I appreciate this. First off, I have a question. What color code in the model does the fire department currently respond to?
CAO.
Through the chair, I'd probably get the colors wrong, but the top three. Yeah, so I know it's the life-threatening, and then the, I think Councillor Patola actually knows the colors better than I do.
My understanding is the fire department currently responds to delay yellow, delay orange, red and purple.
Can you give us the orders? Because I think the first part, like I read through your motion, and the first thing for me was I don't know the details of what we currently go to in terms of how they're categorized as calls. I have a general idea, but what level is this, and where would it be? What would it be cutting off?
So it would be continuing to respond to life-threatening calls. Those are purple calls. Red calls are serious calls, but not life-threatening at the point. Orange and yellow are more medical aid calls, and the fire department responds when there's a delay in ambulance response. And that's of some importance because the fire department doesn't transport. So if they respond to a delay call because the ambulance is coming, what that means is the fire department that's responded is stuck at that scene until the ambulance arrives, which means they're not available for other calls except for the explanations that the fire chief provided us with last week. So it does get more confusing beyond that. By responding to these calls as purple only, we will guarantee the safety of our community. People will not die because they're being denied service, but we will be able to establish a firm line in the sand with senior government to then initiate discussions about how we can work together to properly meet the emergency response needs of our community.
Thank you. So according to my understanding, this is just me reading this now, and I certainly have no experience in this area, but it appears to me that red is also considered immediately life-threatening. So the only reason I bring this up is I would just want to know that if we're going to pass this and our intention is to avoid loss of life, which of course that's got to be for most of our considerations, I would wonder if we would want to consider including red as well, but I don't know the implications of including one and excluding the other or both.
Council, I would just start by saying that that we don't pass this as it is. However, I really appreciate the intent, but we are not informed enough on this topic in order to make a decision on it today. And so I would suggest that we, if we want to explore this, that we ask for a report back on the basis of what's been suggested here, but that we get a whole lot more detail before proceeding.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, and that's absolutely where I was headed with this is that if I could refer this, if we could make a motion to refer, does that require a motion? So I move that we refer this motion to the receipt of a report outlining options and implications at a future meeting within the 2024 calendar year. Just because I feel like this is very important that we get this right, and again, I genuinely really appreciate this. I think this is something that we seriously need to consider, but I just need to have the facts so that I can feel good about the decision that we make here.
Thank you, and I'll second the motion to refer and appreciate that within the 2024 calendar year was noted there, because I think this is an important topic that we need to get details back on as soon as possible. Further discussion. I don't think I had any other hands. So, sorry, Councillor Haggard and then Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, I echo Councillor Dame. I really appreciate the intent of this, and I was very concerned about the burnout of our local firefighters because of all the medical calls they're responding to. But one thing I'm concerned about is a yellow, orange, or red can go into a purple call very quickly and not knowing. For example, on Saturday, I went through a four-way stop on 10th and Argyle, and there's a woman lying in the middle of the road. She'd take a tumble on her bike. So I pulled over, called 911, was trying to help her. I don't know, he asked me if she's breathing. Yes, she's breathing, but I don't know the extent of her injury. So is that a red, orange, or yellow or purple call? I don't know. I'm not a first aid attendant, but it could have very well have been life-threatening. If the ambulance wasn't able to call, I would certainly want somebody there that could help her very quickly, because I'm not capable of making those kind of determinations. So I would need some comfort that there is a standby. So I think we also need to look at, we are going to UBCM, and I'm sure, I don't know what meetings we have scheduled yet, but I think we have to be very firm. We talked to BCM's association last year, but we have to do it again this year and be very firm that we can't afford to be doing this anymore, and make it very clear that we need additional response teams in Port Alberni before we actually say, we're going to cut you off.
Thank you. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I appreciate this coming forward. I guess my question on the defer, or to refer this to a future meeting, is this going to affect the number 5, which is to have this as a central topic in meetings with relevant parties at UBCM when the rest of council goes? So I just want to make sure if we are going to push this along, that at least number 5 for Councillor Patola's sake coming forward, that it's still being talked about at UBCM.
I was thinking the same thing, and I think if there's consensus on council, we can ensure that in the relevant meetings, which there are 2 or potentially 3, that we do include this in our discussion topics at UBCM, even to say this is the motion that we are considering, to have a printed copy of it. I think, you know, we can say it has not been passed, but this is where we're at dealing with the issue.
I'd also like to say too that in my experience, forcing senior levels of government to have a conversation doesn't usually go well, but I appreciate Councillor Patola's effort to do so, and I hope it works out when you guys go to UBCM.
Thank you. Other comments? Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say I appreciate the support of council on a bold, as I quote my fellow councillor, a bold move. This is certainly not to intimidate the province. It's to further that conversation. It's not to deny services. It's to further the best way to be efficient in providing those services, which really is the ambulance responding to the individual who fell off their bike. So as far as the motion to defer goes, I'm certainly in support of that.
Thank you. And I'll just share my own comments. And I have a really hard time with the concept of this motion. While I really appreciate the effort to address what I think we all accept as a problem, we do not have enough ambulance services in our community at this time, though we do have incredible paramedics, obviously. We do not have enough, we do not have funding for enough. One thing I think is important to note is to be cautious of saying that nothing has been done, because since we started these conversations, there has been additional full-time resources added to our community by BC Ambulance. So I think when going into conversations with the province, we always want to recognize what has been done, and nothing has not been done. We have had additional resources. I think from my perspective, I'm not sure even, and I know we'll discuss this in more detail when we get the report, but I'm not sure that the colors that only going to life-threatening is what would be my preference. I do recognize those like delay calls on when something is just really like medical assist. Those probably we should not be going to. But I mean, personally, I've had to call 911 for one of my children who has epilepsy, and in the middle of the night for seizures 3 times. And every single one of those times, the fire department has been the one that responded. And every time the ambulance has come as well and provided wonderful service, but those are not life-threatening calls. But to handle those seizures on my own is challenging, and with the fire department coming, like, you have no idea the relief that comes when the firefighters walk in the door and the fantastic service that they do provide. So while I understand the need to, like, sometimes we have to take a hard stance with the province, it is challenging to get the province to fund some of these resources properly or what we see as adequately. I think sometimes taking a hard stance is the right position, and sometimes it is not. And so, you know, we can definitely have a full conversation when this comes with a full report, but from my perspective, I'm not sure that I can support leaving people who are in challenging medical positions without care to take a stance, even though I do appreciate where the stance is coming from, and I do fully agree that something needs to be done. I'm not sure if there's another way to get there. So maybe we do have to take that stance, but I just know from my own experience that, like, when the firefighters come, you feel a whole lot safer. And I think we're very fortunate to have that resource in our community. Okay. Motion to defer, on the motion to defer, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And moving on to item number 4, which is an update on the racquetball club. Councillor Solda.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'm just kind of curious to know what's happening with the racket club, because it's one little brick at a time, and where are we going with that? At one time, we had said if they didn't get it completed, we would go in and fix it all up, right? So what's the status? Where are we going? And how long is it
Sure, we said
gonna
we would
take?
fix it up.
Well, let's fix it up anyways.
I think we said we might pull the permit.
Pull the permit, okay, pull the permit, that's fix it up to me.
Go ahead, Scott.
I would agree with the mayor on that. I don't think there was ever an intention that, what I can tell you, because with Councillor making that motion, I made an inquiry. The current building permit that is authorizing that work to be done expires on October 12th of this year, of 2024. So the applicant either needs to complete that work under this building permit, or would then have to apply for a new building permit. That's the current status. You're right, they do a little bit of work here, a little bit of work there. They put an awning up most recently, but that's the current status of the active building permit. They have until October of this year to complete it, or they must apply for a new building permit.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. He's just got the building up for sale, and I mean, the brickwork, it looks lovely, but it sure would be nice to have it completed. It just changed that whole block, well, part of that block area anyways.
Thank you. And are there any more questions on that from council? Okay, seeing none, then on to the toy run. Councillor Solda.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Oh, okay.
And just to note that Councillor Patola is recusing himself for the same reason as stated earlier.
So, Madam Mayor, my question on the toy run, there's been some issues in a report is to come back to council. Just kind of wondering where the status is on that report, and because toy run's around the corner.
Thanks for the question. I don't believe it was a report just on the toy run. It was on our whole process. And we will include that in a report. But before that, currently Parks, Rec and Culture and our development services areas of the city are compiling clarification on a letter that was pushed out and some information that was provided. So it'll be much more detailed. As soon as it is ready, I will also provide that to council, but we'll also be sending it out to all groups so we know everybody is clear on how to move forward, how to apply for special event permits or business licensing, and what stream affects what areas, and clarifies whether something is on private land or on public land, what permits you need. I know there's a lot of questions out there currently on that. We have sat with on the issues that were brought forward from the toy run, and we are working through each one of them currently, and today's resolution also helped with that. So again, we'll continue to work with all the groups, but we do know that there was some confusion out in the community, and some of it is amongst staff too. So what we want to do is make sure everybody is clear so we can move forward in a more cohesive manner coming. But that report is also expected to come on some of these items in October.
So right now, that also you're referring to like the craft fair and the farmers market, because there's some issues down there. And I'd love to see us on one page, but are we going to stay status quo as to how they've been charged, or whatever's been happening down there until the end of the year? What's the future at this moment to the end of the year?
Well, I can't predict the future, but we are staying status quo currently. Currently, all the event permits that have been provided have been the same way they have been historically. Nobody has come in following the new process that was outlined and sent out in the group. So we have reverted back to the process how everybody understood it. And once we release the information, we'll also release when timelines of anything will affect. Again, our bylaws do allow us to do things. Some things weren't followed as they are outlined in the bylaw. So again, if they weren't historically and we are correcting a practice, then we will do that with notification.
Okay, and just one last thing, Madam Mayor, is that, well, that's good. So if anybody has any problems or any issues, who should they contact at the city?
So currently, we are working through the process. They can contact Development Services or Parks, Rec and Culture on, depending on what type of permit or where they're trying to rent or what type of event they're doing. There are so many different types that causes some of the confusion. And so I think we have to elaborate on solutions for different items. Also, as we work through our CIP process and our events and everything in October, that'll further give us more understanding of how we're moving forward. But currently, I would contact the same people as they always have. However, if it's on a new process, let's wait until we have everything figured out internally. We're going to publicize the information through a media release, and we'll also send it out to everybody that received a copy of that one letter that was sent out, and any of the events that are currently ongoing.
So there's crafts fairs that have been prepaid, like people plan their events like a year beforehand, right? And so we have some Christmas craft fairs, different, same as farmers markets, that are aimed for Christmas. And I know they have prepaid and to save their spot. So are they going to get a invoice to say, hey, you owe us some more money, or is it going to be the same? I know
No,
that's
no,
been
they're
asked.
not. And so as of right now, I think what we've heard is that it is the status quo as we have been doing it. And while that may not be correct, because in some cases our bylaws have not been followed, if we are going to make a change and implement a change going forward, it will be with notice provided, discussion from council, and intention, and it will be with notice and not last minute. So I think the recognition here is that the letter that went out did not encompass everything, and these are complex decisions. And of course, it came kind of without notice and reasonably short term in an effort from staff to follow the bylaws to the T. And while that absolutely is how it should be, we have to make sure that when we are making a change, it happens with notice and with everyone's awareness. Council has the opportunity to evaluate if that bylaw is as we want it to be, rather than just seeing it implemented in the community. So there will be further discussion. There will be a report come forward, is what we heard when we brought this forward at the committee of the whole meeting. And council will have the opportunity to discuss. But for this year and for the events that are currently underway, we don't have to worry about them incurring any additional costs.
Thank you. It's just really important that the community is very clear on that. That's why I just want to be it all clarified. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. And just to clarify, that does include the final item, which was added to the agenda separate from Toy Run, which was the Farmers Market and Craft Fair. So thank you for those questions. And we'll let Councillor Batola back in now. Any further comments or questions on that? Seeing none, then we will move on to question period, which is an opportunity for the public to ask questions of council on decisions or recommendations made during the course of the meeting. Up to 3 questions will be permitted per speaker, and for anyone participating electronically, please use the raise your hand feature and we will call on you in the order in which you appear. Are there any members of the public who would like to come forward? Mr. Anderson.
Almost made it through. I guess through yourself to it, Mr. Smith, if the racquetball club, and I've brought this up numerous times over the last, I thought it was over 2 years, my understanding is the permits go for 2 years. I may be wrong there, it could be longer. If they renewed that permit, I also noticed, I thought I saw a for sale sign on that building as well. If they renewed their permit, what guarantee would the city have that they would finish that job in a timely fashion, or would we wait another length of the contract for them to finish that other half?
That's a great question. Could I just maybe ask our Director of Development Services to clarify, first of all, can they renew the permit or are they applying for a new permit? And do we have, once the permit is expired, do we have the ability to not issue a permit? And I guess what would our sort of recourse be if after 2 years that work is not completed? And I know that we could potentially do remedial action or a bigger step, but short of that.
So I'm not sure what, I do believe you can apply for a renewal, or we may have already reached that and a new permit has to be done. When you take out a building permit, you have the time to do that project. Most projects try and do it as quick as possible because that's the economic way to do it. But I don't think when we issue a building permit, we have the authority to say it must be done in 30 days perhaps, or something like that. I don't think that's within our current bylaw allow us to do that. If it is undone and incomplete, I think likely some level of remedial action report saying that this building is not up to the standard that the city council wishes to consider, and going down that path is, I think that would be the most logical option that we would have to approach. Based off the top of my head, I think that's what we would be limited to do. Once a building permit is issued, it's really just following the building code, and they have within that time to get the work done.
Thank you for that. Okay, any follow-up questions?
Just some clarification to the point that you brought up, Madam Mayor, is how can we come back since they have not finished, and I don't think you made an attempt, can we refuse to renew it? And then we come into the fact, if we don't renew it, how do we get the job finished? So it's a big circle there, but there seems to be something missing from the protocol that we can take on the owners of the building to commit to finishing that project. It is an eyesore, especially with some people who have started a business in that area that are successful. So you didn't quite answer that question. I know where you're coming from, but we're in a catch-22 here.
Yeah, and thanks for that. I think it's a challenging issue. However, I think that what I heard, and we would need more detail on this before making a determination, obviously, but what I heard is the likely next step for council to consider would be a remedial action order. So that may be not issuing another permit or not issuing a renewal, but rather once that permit expires, considering remedial action as we've taken with some other properties.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and any questions online? Okay, seeing none, would somebody like to move adjournment?
Sorry, would be an adjournment to go back into in camera.
Oh, thank you, yes. Is that the correct way to do that? We're going to adjourn the regular and just note that we're reconvening our in-camera meeting.
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, thank you.